Welcome back to the Staffing Playbook, where we keep you in the know so you can lead with confidence. In this episode, we're diving into the latest economic data, jobs and consumer spending, tariffs, and more. And we're going to translate all of this. What does it mean for you, your staffing firm, logistics leaders, HR pros, anyone operating in the staffing space? I'm joined here by Kim Henderson, a regular guest. Welcome, Kim. How are you doing?
Hey, Steve, doing great today. Good to be back. Good to join Staffing Playbook again, and we're missing we're missing G Money.
We're missing G Money. So G Money, she is out on PTO, which is well deserved, and I'm a little envious. So Genevieve, we miss you, but don't think about us. Enjoy your time away.
Yeah, we'll try to make her proud.
We're gonna make her proud. So we're gonna get started right after this.
28 months down, yeah, the industry's been bruised, but we're not here to fold, we're here to refuse. While others pause, we built the plays, now we're leading the charge in a brand new phase. You feel that tension, that's the pressure to grow. Hiring's messy, turnovers high and budgets low, but we don't panic, we adapt. We sharpen the edge and reload the map. This is the Staffing Playbook, strategy on tap. Steven brings the grit, G Money brings the slap. Forget the fluff, forget the spin. We give you plays that actually win. From the break room floor to the boardroom seat, we've walked the walk, now we bring the heat. CDLs, forklifts, line leads, and execs. We place the best and fix the wrecks. Insight, hustle, leadership bold. No safe takes, just the truth told cold. Wanna scale your team, wanna close that gap. We got the data, the story, and the roadmap. So turn it up, lock it in. This is more than a podcast, it's a win. This is the Staffing Playbook. Let's get to work, it starts right now.
All right, Kim Henderson. Look, it's fun having Richard on, and of course, my co-host, Genevieve. But, sometimes we don't get to really get into the details when there's four of us in a 45-minute segment. So I am stoked about today because it is just you and me. You're our compass. You're our guide. You're going to keep us on the straight and narrow with the data and the facts. And there's a lot of things happening in the economy. There's a lot happening in staffing. There's a big, beautiful bill, which also there's going to be some things there that affect staffing, both good and bad. And there's just a lot going on. Unemployment, college graduates have the highest unemployment rate among the total segment at 5.8%. There's household debt. We've got the jobs report, the unemployment rates. We've got the staffing index. Just everything is going on, and we're going to break it down for you today. And so, Kim, thank you for coming on again as a guest to help us, get through this data. And what does it mean to me, to you, to the staffing industry, and how do we use this information to be more forward thinking and not so much reactive, but proactive?
Exactly, Steve. And that's what we're after, how to take the data and determine from that, what are the opportunities, right? What are some of the things that we can take off after as staffing owners and people in the industry, whether you're working a desk or you own a staffing firm, what are the things that you can go and aim and point yourself at and adapt, right, based on market conditions. And yeah, you're right. There is a lot going on right now. So we could start with the labor numbers, right, for the month of June. Yeah. So, okay, 147,000. While they did exceed expectations. You're finding that, like temporary employment, they're saying it's actually down 5.6%, right, compared to June. Right. 24. So, a lot of what's going on there is, I believe what I see, again, in talking to companies is a lot of people just aren't moving. They're not leaving their job. They're staying put because it used to be, and you and I both remember, of course, 2022, you could go and almost hit the lottery, so to speak, by jumping and going to a new job in a new company and get this great pay increase. And all the data, it's showing right now that basically those days are done, and you're going to go and get your standard raises and where you are, but you're not going to go, if you jump, and get anything really significant. So most people are staying in place right now, which is an interesting dynamic. And Stephen, I don't know if you looked at this, and this is something that I think could be a huge opportunity for anyone out there that's listening. So I want to get the industry breakdown of jobs, right?
Yeah.
And number one, what would you think would be the number one industry that hired in the month of June? And then we'll talk about this one in depth.
In the month of June, I would guess either healthcare or construction. That's my guess.
Okay, well, you're kind of close. You're right there. Healthcare is number 2, and construction was number 3 in terms of job creation.
Okay, I got 2 out of 3.
Yeah, you got 2 out of 3. Number 1 was state and local government. And everyone out there listening is going, well, wait, I'm confused.
Wait, whoa. Not just them listening. I'm listening and I'm confused. Kim, help me out here.
Okay, let me break it down. So actually, I sold into, did government sales and staffing for many, many years, right, at the Fed level and the state and local level. And first thing I'd say is don't confuse the Fed level with state and local, right? So
Right.
Fed government was in a massive decline. And we all know that, right, with DOGE, and that still continues. But state and local was 80,000 jobs in terms of new creation. And here's why, having come from that space or worked that space. Think about it, Stephen. You've got things that have to stay up and running, like basic public safety and public services that cities and counties and state entities have to provide to their citizens, right? Things like fire, police, water, sewage, tax collector, supervisor of elections, clerk of court, to handle court cases,
recreation, adding a pickleball court to your neighborhood.
Yeah. So all that, you can't just go and say, hey guys, we're not going to go and do, trash pickup anymore or have, water come into people's houses. You have to keep those things up and running. And also too, at the state level, there's all those entities like Department of Health, Department of Children and Families, Department of Transportation, Department of Corrections, right? Those things, no matter what happens in the economy, have to stay up and running. Those are kind of essential. But here's the thing. It's a different budget, right? It's not coming from necessarily completely the Fed budget. A lot of it's at the state level. Some of it's federal funding, but some of it obviously is state funding too. And, so states obviously budget differently for that. They like, at least in my experience in working with them, they like to work oftentimes with staffing companies and bring in people contract or hire, and you're probably scratching your head on that one. What? Think about it. If you're a state entity or a local county or a city, and you have all these civil service rules in place and you want to hire someone permanently, it could probably take you 9 months to a year to do that, because first you've got to post internal, then you've got to do this and post there, 60 days for this, that, or the other. So in my experience in working with her, like, hey, Kim, we want a contractor for this, or hey, we want a contract to hire. We want to bypass these cumbersome civil service rules because we don't have, 9 months to sit around and wait for, the development of this project. And also, Stephen, what else I learned was, we've all seen it, we've all experienced it, and we do every day. We call a company in the commercial space, right? And they're just getting beat up by staffing companies, right?
Yeah.
All the time, right? And they're like, nope, sorry, not going to meet with you. Interestingly enough, in the state and local space, they were willing to meet with you, and you could do discovery, figure out the lay of the land. Oftentimes, the barriers to entry for us were not that bad. You just need to figure out how to work with them. Some would hand you their contract. Some would take your contract to sign. Others wanted you to be on state contract.
Yep.
And others were like, well, if you're not on state contract, sub through somebody that is, so you can bill your person on here. So you had lower barriers to entry, and people that, quite honestly, that were very much more open to meeting with you. And then further, I found that the skill sets were pretty much on par with what we place every day in the private sector. I mean, so I don't know if I sold you. I want to do state.
You're 100% right. It's interesting. The data actually shows that. Yeah. But here's the thing. There's you think about your local city or county. Like I've been talking to an HR manager of a small city, population about 60, 70,000. I don't know if you call that small or not, but it's pretty small. Yeah. And she is the single HR leader, no recruiter, and she's got to do all the hiring right within her city for all the city positions, up including think about during the summertime, you need lifeguards for the city pools and the rec centers. You need help there. And so she has to hire about 150 people for the season, just short term. And she's like, not only do I not have time to go recruit and interview everybody, but I don't have time to onboard all these individuals, in such a short window. And so, this HR leader reached out to me and was like, help, like this is exactly what I would expect a staffing agency to help me with.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I wouldn't have thought about that, the seasonality and the peak periods, but you're right. Anywhere where you're going to have, beaches and things like that, and pools, and and more people coming to an area, which creates greater demand, for public services. And again, guys, there's so many components to it. People just think, okay, Kim, what is there besides city and county? What I found in working it was pretty decentralized at the local level. So, for instance, sheriff's office would have their own IT, clerk of court had their own IT, tax collector their own IT, city and county had their own IT. Again, supervisor of elections had their own IT. The transportation, like the bus lines, they had their own
That's
IT.
right.
So, if you feel like you can't get into one particular area, reach out to another one, right? And oftentimes, at least in Florida, where I'm from, they had, we use LinkedIn, but they had, directors of IT and directors of finance listed on their websites, their city, county websites. And you could just reach out and call. It was very transparent, phone numbers, emails, and reach out and introduce yourself and try to get in front of them. So there's money to be made there. And I will tell you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. You just need to get in front of them and figure out how they want to work with you and what are the barriers to get in, how to overcome them.
Kim, I think you're going to make happy quite a few HR leaders in that space with the cities and counties and state and local governments. But also, once the word gets out, they're going to be just as annoyed as your local manufacturer that gets hit up 30 times a day from a sales rep in our industry. Yeah. So get out there first, get the contract signed.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the interesting thing that I kind of shocked myself on when I was doing it. I mentioned that this is like a contract hotbed, right? Contract to hire with cities and counties and at the state level. When you start to get in there and navigate and they start to trust you, how just like in the private sector, opportunity presents itself. And I remember, we were working with the clerk of court. And next thing you know, their CIO had resigned, and they came to us and said, hey, we'll pay you a fee. We'll give you an exclusive. Find us our next CIO, permanent right out of the gate. And we were like, okay.
Let's go.
So, yeah, exactly. So it really can lead itself, from a stepping stone, one thing to the next. And by the way, they all know each other. City, county, all the sheriff's office, they all know one another. So if you get a good referral in one area, they'll pick up the phone for you and call their buddy, in one county over for you. So
100%.
It was definitely kind of the network, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, before we move on, I want to isolate what you said earlier. We were talking about the unemployment trends, the job growth, and we talked about briefly just the trend line with recent college graduates, ages between 22 and 27. They are seeing a tough job market. Their unemployment rate for that segment is 5.8%. That's the highest since 2013. You exclude the COVID years in those numbers, but this is a big problem that's not being addressed today, and it's quite frustrating for anybody that's a college grad, anybody that has a college grad or knows a college grad. You know exactly what we're talking about today. It is tough for them to find a job, and it feels like there's just no solution. They're staying home with mom and dad. They're picking up some gig work here and there, but they've got all this college debt. They entered college with a promise that if they graduated, they would have a job waiting for them, a career, they could buy a home. Like, that is not happening right now.
Yeah. There's this is actually a topic that's kind of near and dear to me, right? And I can almost identify with it very closely. When I graduated, undergrad, it was in the middle of a recession and there were no jobs, right? And so you get out and you're going, oh God, great. What am I going to do? We'll talk about, you always got to pivot, adapt, and move forward, right? And be a problem solver. But I think at the base level, which is unfortunate, It's let's look at the college and university system. They do a very poor job, and it's not part of a professor's metrics or KPIs to help their students find jobs or prepare them to find jobs and get out into the working world. The university system is geared toward research and raising money. They just don't really have a KPI on helping prepare students to get jobs, which sounds counterintuitive because that's why people go to college in the first place, right?
Right.
So putting that to the side, if you are a staffing company, a great thing to do, and I've done this as well, start to get involved in your local university system, right? You reach out to the Career Resource Center, get in with them, and then you can actually start to meet like the deans of various colleges and start to get involved. Like, let's say you can meet the dean of the engineering school, right? And the next thing you know, you're involved in some projects, you're meeting the students, you're maybe out there, giving a how-to segment or doing a webinar for them. But
Right.
really not only does it help them get prepared, like to teach them how to do a resume, how to interview, how to look for a job, but it also funnels back to your organization because this becomes placeable talent that hopefully you can monetize and capitalize by getting them a job, right?
Yep.
So I think that's step one for a staffing company. But you're looking for, what can students do, or why is this happening beyond that, right? And I think, Steve, one of the things is, if we look at it, you got like that lock-in effect that we talked about earlier. You don't have people jumping from one company to the other, creating openings, right? And you don't necessarily, because you have higher inflation and because you have uncertainty, you don't necessarily have people retiring as young as they used to. They're staying in the workforce longer, going, well, if I'm 62, I'm gonna hang out till I'm here till I'm 65, and scrape together more cash, right? So you don't have people, you don't have that movement, right, back and forth. So it's not creating open roles. So that's a big problem. And I think also too, you have like I'll call it that new AI reality, right? So think about some of the jobs, Stephen, that kids get out of school. It's maybe more research based, customer service, or analyzing data. Those entry level type of jobs when you get into the company and you're 22 years old, those jobs are kind of being replaced by AI.
Yep.
Right? And so why do you need to hire someone? And I have actually a stat here. The Microsoft CEO said in April that around 30% of the code is now written by AI for them. And they said that was part of the thing that the data point that took into effect, the recent layoffs, right? I mean, AIs are writing some of the basic code. So again, you couple that factor in and kids are going, okay, well, the research job that was there for me 3 years ago maybe isn't there today, right? I think also too, you don't have a lot to offer, right? All you really have to offer when you're out of school is that piece of paper behind you, and if you haven't done internships and you haven't really gotten involved in a lot of stuff, you don't have the experience, you don't have the skills, right? Wouldn't you rather go and hire someone 8 years out of school versus someone, would you, right?
Right. You want to get the experienced hire.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think, Stephen, too, couple that with, you've got a little bit of just uncertainty within the economy. People are taking the wait and see on what's going to happen with inflation, what's going to happen with tariffs. And you couple all that together and you got like this tepid environment, and you've got these people coming out, like you said, saddled with debt, right? And, not much experience, going, look at me. So I think those are the factors that are going into why their rates higher. Right?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on everything you shared. I think it's spot on. You've got employers are cautious, right? We've got a whole nother set of tariffs that are, been announced and more to come. And that has just been back and forth, really disruptive. And then, the AI replacing traditional first time roles, that's just a new reality we have to live with. And, that experience that you're speaking to, it's like, you need to, not only as you're studying in college and getting your degree, but you got to learn the application of these tools to help you just be a better hire. That, look, I can save you money. I can be more efficient. I can do the work of 3 people, and that's including myself and my experience in AI. I'm going to hire that person. I've been interviewing people lately for some internal management roles, and I've been really drilling into AI. What kind of experience do they have with AI? What's their thought around and belief system around AI? And because I want someone that's going to come in and already embracing AI and embracing new tools, because that's just one big tool to our tool belt now that we have to use, or we're going to be left behind. You mentioned internships. It's interesting because a lot of companies, this is where staffing can really shine, because a lot of companies, they want interns, right? They want that that labor, and maybe it's somebody that they'll consider hiring full time down the road, but the time to onboard for a 13-week, 14-week internship, it's just not worth the cost of all of that onboarding cost. And then you got to worry about housing for the individual, and it's just employers, it's just harder for them to start bringing in interns. But the interesting thing is, these universities, if you want to graduate, you have to have 1 or 2 internships depending on what program you're in. And so as a staffing agency, you can go and meet with the university staff, ask them how many interns do they need to deploy, and likely you're gonna hear in the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get your current customers or prospective customers, let's get the two talking, and let's connect. I'll give you an example, a recent story. Our CEO, Reed Laws, he went down to a university in Idaho, and this is a big tech university with automation and mechanics and industrial automation, CNC operators, you name it, right? Perfect place for light industrial, commercial, customers that need that talent, with the engineers and so on. And so he met with the faculty and, talked to them about their needs and their struggles. He was pretty frank, like, you're making false promises to these students. Like, you have to have a plan to put them to work, and we can be that plan. We can be that solution. And then Reed got in front of 40 of our HR leaders locally, these manufacturers in Utah, talked to them about the talent we have at our fingertips with this university. And they're like, this sounds great. And so we've already got our first intern starting, and many more to come. And so we, as a staffing industry, we can tap into this. We just have to build those relationships, get in front of the faculty, get in front of your customers, and get the two together. And we can start helping these college grads.
You hit the nail on the head. And really, once you start to reach out to these universities and navigate with their system and work with them, they will open the doors for you and give you access to the students, right? But you have to come in and again, try to provide some value, right? Like you're saying, help them with the internships, help them with, job searching type of skills, and then navigate with the deans of the colleges that you want to, and get actually down to the individual professors. And you will gain access to the students, and then hopefully be able to help them get a job and place them. And like you said, maybe even monetize that. But, to your point, Stephen, it's like, okay, forget lamenting. If you're a brand new, college grad, you can't get a job. Lamenting certainly not going to pay the bills. What actions can they take? And while you talked about one right there, another one is, okay, you've got some time on your hands. Go out there and, like you said, amp up your skills, right? Go out there and get a certification. There's so many online courses that you can do to learn about it and learn about things in webinars. Go out there and maybe get a certification. It could be worth paying for, and within your given industry, learn. Get some things to put on your resume that show not only are you proactive, but your skills and experience are coming together to be something that an employer would want, right?
Right.
I'd say that's a proactive thing to do. And next, while you have to go, and I know we're in the, Gen Zs and, grew up really within the whole social media generation. We know that when it comes to like LinkedIn and things like that, you just can't submit your resume into the black hole and hope, right? Hope's not a strategy.
Right.
It's like the Pope or a small kid, right? It's not a strategy for the rest of us. So what they need to do is get incredibly proactive, right? And comfortable with reaching out to hiring managers on LinkedIn, introducing themselves, trying to get a conversation, sending their resume directly to a hiring manager, just like we would, right? Trying to certainly navigate around HR or the, the black hole or internal talent acquisition, or getting screened out via an ATS system. Get in tight with that hiring manager, reach out, right? Make it a goal, reach out to 10 a day, introduce yourself, get the resume there, be proactive, right, on LinkedIn. But second, and this has become a lost art, it's get out of your chair, if you're recently graduated, or even if you've been in the workforce for years, and go to a networking event that matches or professional association event that matches your profession, right, and your skill set. There are tons of them out there, whether you're in accounting, whether you're in IT, or like let's say you wanted to chase an engineering job in the manufacturing sector. I think just about every single occupation has a professional association that would align to it. Challenge yourself. Usually these events are pretty cheap or even free. Go out there, put yourself out there, and start shaking people's hands, having conversations and meeting them. Because we'll go back to the whole government thing that I talked about a minute ago.
Yeah.
I relied on that heavily when I first started doing government sales and staffing. Let me join NDIA and
That's right.
communication. Get out there, shake hands. And I'll tell you, Steve, it fast-tracked me. People that I would chase for 6 months on the phone or a year, on email. It was like you got to meet them, shake their hand, and then schedule an in-person office visit with them. No different if you're looking for a job. The human connection, the contact, the one-on-one is really going to move the needle quickly. And I know kids today, I call them kids, young adults today are usually not comfortable with that. You've got to get out of your comfort zone and go out there and meet people, right? There's all these levels and tools in your toolkit. That's a tool, in the toolkit, right?
Yeah, it's about standing out, right? Out of the sea of all the new grads. Like I had a mechanical engineer student. He's in his last year, and so he's looking at the job market, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to start. So I gave him some basic tips. But one of the things I told him is an absolute must is because he has a focus in automotive, and so this mechanical engineer student, I said, go reach out to other tenured engineers in different automotive industries and ask for a meeting, whether it's Teams meeting, whether it's in person, if they live close to you, but get to know them, get to know their industry, what's working, what's not, how did they get their start? What kind of tips would they give that person? Like, just get in tight, build these relationships, and don't force it, make it very organic, and don't just do it once, do it multiple times over multiple months. And not only are you going to gain some valuable insights that are going to set you apart, because now you can talk the talk in an interview where the recruiter on the other side is literally, they see you as that next engineer in their organization because you're hitting all the keywords, all the key pain points that are relevant to them today. But also you might have an influencer in the building now, someone you've built a relationship with that might help you get that job.
That is a great idea that you gave him to do, and you're right. Now he understands, how to have an interview, what questions might be asked, and it starts to show too that he's proactive, right? And an employer is going to look at that. What does an employer want? They want you to come in. They're hiring because they have a business problem, and they want you to come in and solve that business problem and provide a result to them, right? At the end of the day. So if this person, can come in and be more educated and think about logically how to step through problems that organization may have and how he would solve them, it's going to make him a lot more valuable than somebody that just, hopped out of school and went on the interview and had no clue, right? So it's giving him, I guess, a thought process, right? Another thing to consider, Stephen, and we can talk about your first job out of college, and we'll talk about mine too, and maybe we'll all get a good laugh here. But my first job, I mentioned I graduated in a recession, was a contract to hire position.
No kidding.
Yeah. And and I think a lot of people, and especially universities, they scoff and they put their nose in the air at contract positions. And I'm like, why in the world would you do that? What a great way as a company to get the try before you buy and see if the new hire is going to be a good fit. But also too, you as a fresh graduate, it gives you an opportunity to, assess that company as well. Maybe you work there for 9 months and go, I love it. I can't wait to become a permanent employee. Or maybe you work there 9 months and go, wait a minute, I don't even know that I like this profession anymore. I might want to pivot or switch gears, at the age of 22. So I would say tell them to be open-minded on contract to hire roles, because it can be a great springboard and you can learn a lot. And also too, be open-minded that you're not going to get necessarily your cream of the crop dream job right out of the starting gate at 22, making 80K with the
not going to happen.
Not going to happen. They need to manage their own expectations in terms of what's going to be reality. You've got to live in reality. And I would say, as long as a role can check some of the boxes, right? That there's opportunity there. It's going to help you gain some skills. It may not be ideal. It may not be exactly what you want. But what I'd say is, in this environment, take it. You never know what can grow from that opportunity. Or if you get in and do a great job, maybe that's not your ideal role, but maybe they go, this person's, A+, we got a new role for him over here. Let's go put him or her in this role over here. So opportunity and doors can open. Don't shut the door in your face and cut your nose to spite your face, as the saying goes, because it's not the perfect role. Manage your expectations. Take it if it's less than perfect, as long as they can check the box of, I'm going to get some skills and I'm going to get an opportunity.
I 100% agree. You have to manage your expectations. You got to, and you got to pair it with reality, and then you got to have a very thoughtful plan. It doesn't have to be perfect. 80% is just fine. But what first job do I need to get that's going to give me the experience, give me the tenure, that's going to help me get the next job that I need, and then that job is going to help me get the closer to my dream job, and then maybe 3 or 4 down, you're finally there over a few years. So you have to be realistic with yourself, but be thoughtful. What is it that I can gain in this position with this company that's going to help me get to now the next one, and then the next? And if you're not thinking like that, you're just going around blindly, with these hopes. Hope is not a dream, or is not a strategy.
Not a strategy. Yep. I mean, look at it this way, right? If your options are, and God, there's nothing wrong with this, right? Because every job, it has value, and every job is needed. But if it makes the difference between doing, a really menial job, right, that you could do when you're 15 years old, versus taking a professional job that may not be quite the right fit for you, but you're going to get a few skills, you're going to get some opportunity and learn some things. Take the job, right? Versus staying in the menial high school type job that's not going to enhance your skills, right? Make the leap. At the age of 22, you can always course correct. As you said, you're going to be gaining, valuable experience. Okay, Steve, I want to know, what was your first job out of college? And I'll tell you.
Okay, well, here's the funny thing, Kim. I barely graduated high school. I just, bad student, didn't care. I was doing a lot of extreme sports and traveling around the country, competing, and I finally, was sold on the idea of college. So I enrolled into a IT technical program.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, hold on. 6 weeks in, I am just like, what am I doing with my life? Right? We all have that moment the first couple of months of college. Should I be here? Am I supposed to be here? And most people they get the advice, just stick with it. You're going to figure it out. Well, I'm impatient, and I did not want to stick with it. So 6 weeks in, I dropped out of college, and I'm like, what do I do now? I'm 18 years old. I start my own company.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. That's great. Hey, like we said, in one of our past podcasts, college is not the only pathway to success. We talked about, a lot of the skilled trades in our last podcast, how folks can go and make 6 figures. It's a pathway to business ownership, and there are jobs that can't be replaced by AI, and they can't be outsourced. College is not the only avenue for people to have a successful life. I 100% know that, believe that, and I want to make sure everyone out there knows that.
I at 18 years old, I was making around $10,000 a month, and
oh my God.
So that for me, that was my university, right? And
Yeah.
I'm a forever student. I haven't gone back to college, but just because of my career path, I've learned the things that I need to learn to get me where I am. I continue to learn the things that I need to learn to take me where I need to go. And so life has been college for me.
You hit the nail on the head. Learning is a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop at any point. Because when it stops at any point, whether you're 20 or whether you're 80, that's kind of when you become that dinosaur, right? And I tell you, if there's anybody that definitely knows so much about the market and trends and where things are going in the industry and really a lot of different industries, it's you. I mean, you're like a student of it. You study all this stuff. And like you said, that's great. No matter who you are, like you're getting out of, you're 22, let's say you get out of school, don't think that your learning ends there. Your learning needs to go on for the rest of your life, right? Or you will become a dinosaur.
That's right. That learning in college really is the best thing you got out of that, besides the piece of paper, is you learned a discipline that you should apply the rest of your life.
Yeah, you're exactly. You're right. And I remember I had a teacher that once said, "Hey guys, if you think you're done learning, you're going to be a dinosaur, and nobody's ever going to hire you one day, or you're not going to have a job one day when you're 50." All right. So my first role, let me tell you. So so it sounds like it's all glamorous and cool, but so I was a financial analyst for the Transamerica Corporation, right?
Nice.
And, I had the little pyramid out there. Oh no, not nice.
No.
So here I am. I'm 22 years old, making $18,500 a year. And what we were basically doing is selling mortgage loans at 18% to people that had C minus credit, right? And we did everything from sell the loan, like getting on the phone, getting people. We underwrote the loan. We worked up all the debt to income pieces. We did the credit. We closed the loan, and then we serviced and collected on the loan. So let me tell you what that means, Steve. At the end of every month, right? We had to have all the money collected. Yours truly would head into the bad neighborhoods in Tampa and go and knock on someone's door for a mortgage check. Swear to God, can you imagine?
You would knock on their door to get a check.
God is my witness. I can picture it like it was yesterday. There you are, like in your, your suit, your whatever, knocking on the door to collect this guy or gal's mortgage payment. And, sometimes they'd open the door and, and kind of tell you where to go. And then sometimes, they would just ignore you and maybe peek out the window. But can you imagine doing that today in today's environment? You get shot, right?
I don't know what's worse, a missionary knocking on your door or a debt collector.
Yeah. Right. And so again, this is a reputable company, but we were, given these high interest, basically the goal was to refinance their mortgage and roll all their debt into one, at 18%, right? And that's how the company made its money. And here it is. I have to say, going back to what I said, it was not my favorite job, and I did it for 2 years. And at 18.5, it was, quite honestly, it was awful. But what I learned in that job really just, it's today, it really helped me understand financing. It helped me understand credit. It helped me understand, personal finance, how to manage money. Quite honestly, because you're diving in, you're looking at somebody's, financial picture. I mean, today I could look at anybody's credit report and tell you exactly what's been happening, what's happening now, and what's probably going to happen, because we had to go and do all the underwriting of that. So I look at it and go, it was not a fun job. It was a kind of a miserable job, actually. But what I learned in terms of experience really, really, I took with me through the rest of my life, and it actually helped me to be able to go get a job in staffing. At least I could come in, because part of this job was sales, right?
Yep.
You had to go sell an 18% mortgage, right? How much fun is that? And so when I'm interviewing in staffing, like we'll talk about your sales background. I'm like, hey, if I can sell an 18% mortgage to somebody, I'm pretty sure I could help you with this. So
100%.
Lesson learned, a pretty rotten job as first jobs go, but look at it from the standpoint of what you learn and what you gain that you can take with you somewhere else, as you noted. So
what a cool
you were
story.
blowing me away on money. Look at that. You were like 10K a month. That's insane.
Yeah, I got lucky. All right. So speaking of debt, let's move on to some consumer and industry trends. You've got household debt that hit over 18.2 trillion. This is obviously a record high. This is driven by mortgages, interest rates, student loans. Interestingly, credit card debt fell a little, which, in my mind, that indicates consumers are tightening up. And you had consumer spending dropped, 10 basis points in May. It's small, but it's a telling sign that people are watching their wallets. And, for staffing, this means job seekers, you're going to have more people looking for jobs because of this belt tightening. But again, the jobs aren't necessarily there for them, and because employers are cautious when it comes to expanding their headcount, especially in temporary and entry level roles, which where that's the industry that I mostly serve.
Right. Yeah, and Stephen, you hit a very important point, and we were about to talk about this, I think, in our last podcast, and I don't know that we dove in depth with it.
No, we didn't.
Right now, 60%, and this is in 2025, 60%, 6 out of 10 currently employed workers either currently do have a side job or are planning on getting one this year. That number just kind of like should rock you, right? 60% of people that have a job want or need a second job or already have one, because to your point, if you look at inflation, okay, luckily it's tempered, right? It's gone down. It's not what it was a couple of years ago. It's what 2-3% a month. But what happens is that becomes like your new floor, right? It never goes back down. It's not going to go back down to where it was in 2019, and the prices aren't going to go down. It just sets a new bar floor, and it rises more slowly. But people are looking at that going, okay, I got, whether it be an auto loan or a mortgage, I've got, groceries, I've got childcare costs, all these things have gone up exponentially. Yes. And a lot of these folks are having to go and take a second job to make ends meet, as well as pay off student debt, right, that we touched on before. Yep. So it's really telling. And I was reading some stats, and pardon me, I don't have the exact source, but I've read it in 2 different places, that last year saw a record number of people starting to tap in, sadly, unfortunately, to their 401ks and start to take 401k loans to make ends meet. And that was in 2024. And
that's terrifying.
That is terrifying, because when you're starting to kind of go to rob Peter, to pay Paul, and then you've got to pay yourself back. And if you don't, you've got a huge tax hit. That's telling right there. So, I think like I said, you've got a lot of factors going on here.
Yeah, there is. I mean, you mentioned, 60% are in 2025 are going to be, or going into 2026, they're going to be looking for some sort of gig, job or second job. I haven't looked at the latest data, but I'm sure it's climbed. Back in February, we reached an all-time high in recorded history of people having more than one job. There was over 9 million, almost 10 million people that are working more than one job. And so, it just goes back to, the cost of living has gone up so much, and then you got the interest rates, and you've got these student loans, and consumer spending is down, and so the jobs are not there. And so people are getting creative and taking on these part-time jobs and these gig positions and trying to start something on their own.
Yeah, exactly. And here's an interesting anecdotal story, right? You talk about consumer spending. This was probably like about a month ago. I was at like a, one of those outdoor outlet malls, right, that we all have everywhere, in the U.S. And I was waiting on my spouse as he was like, trying on tennis shoes. And I started like talking to the person about the mall and the mall traffic. And, she was saying that, because it looked busy as heck to me. And she said that their traffic was down about 9% over 2025 from the same time, in 2024. And I said, well, what's accounting for that, right? Well, what do you think that is? And, her comment was, again, I'm in Florida, it could be different throughout the country, but she said, tourism is down, people tightening their belt, not necessarily, taking that expensive trip. And she said, a lot of our traffic, we were getting from Canadians. She said that it's been estimated, I guess the numbers of the mall ownership, the Canadian traffic was down 19%.
That's significant.
Yeah, exactly. The Canadians that are, for whatever reason, I guess, they're
Well, they're struggling too in Canada, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was down. She said, conversely, German tourism was up maybe like 5%, but the Canadian piece was down. And in general, just people are doing, maybe more staycations or quicker, less expensive trips. And it was, and again, like all the factors we pointed out, things are more expensive. People have less disposable income to maybe go. And like you said, the consumer spending is tempered a bit,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's all tying together. I mean, you look at the temporary jobs dropped 2,600 jobs in June. and May, I believe there was a decline of 20,000 temporary positions. Manufacturing job openings have remained about around that 400,000 mark, each month since May of 2024, where it was about 576,000. But it fell back in May from 500,000 to 400,000. And this is that up and down trend. It's telling a story. Like, manufacturing still hiring, but not with consistency. And staffing firms that service manufacturing, we need to be agile. We need to be ready to ramp up and down quickly for customers. You've got the impact of the tariffs and the big beautiful bill. This week we heard there's going to be potentially 50% tariff on copper imports. So think about EV, AI, and tech. 50% on Brazilian imports, possibly 200% on pharmaceuticals, right? Philippines, Iraq, this is all just back to companies that are making these long-term decisions to invest in infrastructure. A lot of people they're just putting their foot on the brake.
Yeah. I guess the good news was, from a corporate tax rate, any type of corporate tax cut within the big beautiful bill will, hopefully, entice or spur companies to hire, maybe and invest. Maybe they have a little bit more money that they can go and bring new people in with, or make investments in infrastructure and things like that. So it's interesting to see how it all plays out, right? You have all these, like you said, all these inputs coming together into an economy that's, for lack of a better word, it's steady, right? I would say it's steady, but it's a lukewarm, wait and see type environment, across the board, right? It's kind of tepid, but it's holding steady. So we'll see where that heads. But the point I think of what you're saying is, if I'm sitting in a job right now, or anyone out there sitting in a job right now, what can you do, right?
Yeah.
And what I would do is control what you can control, right? You can control your actions and your mindset. The actions I would take is, number one, keep enhancing your skills, especially if your employer will pay for it, like a certification or classes or whatever. Go for it, right?
Yes.
Make that investment in yourself. If not, go online. There's so much stuff out there that you can learn and do and get certified in. Become that A player, right? That indispensable A player, to your company, because it's really going to set you apart from the other employees that aren't gaining that knowledge and learning, like what you spoke of earlier. And then too, Steve, I would say, know where you stand. I'm amazed at how many people out there have, we'll call it minimal EQ or minimal self-awareness. They may think they're the top employee, and then their boss would beg to differ, right? So
Yeah.
if you're not having, steady reviews and things like that, you need to go make certain that you're sitting down with your boss to determine where you're doing well, where you need to improve, and map out a plan for that, right? That's
right.
Just a professional, mature way to handle it, and constantly strive, for that continuous improvement, right?
You made a really good point. I don't want to go off topic too much, but like investing in yourself, getting certifications, see if your company will sponsor you. There was a LinkedIn survey done last year. I can't remember the exact percentage. It was something around 67% of CEOs said, their talent, like their biggest worry is the skill shift with their talents, not being able to upgrade their talent, get the people with the experience already. Like, they're really focused on, we are not hitting our business goals because we don't have the right talent. And so on the opposite side of the coin, it was somewhere around 90% of employees said they would stay with the company they're at if they would invest in them, in their learning and development. So learning and development as an organization should not just be some operating costs. This should be a strategic investment, not for the workforce of today, but for the workforce of tomorrow. And so all your employees are saying, invest in me. Your CEO is saying we need to invest in them. And then everyone in the middle is confused that this is an operation cost versus a strategic investment.
Yeah, you're right, because that's what people want and what they need. And sometimes they, need that little nudge. Maybe they're not going to be able to go out there and sign up for online courses and get the certification and pay for it themselves, but maybe they want it, but maybe they can't afford it. So that really, to your point, I think will set organizations apart, the ones that are actually supplying skill enhancement and upskilling their folks, their workforce, versus the ones that aren't doing it, aren't investing in it. And like I said, I don't think it has to be some grandiose, thing where you're going and paying for people's, PhDs and master's degrees
Sure.
and all that. No, absolutely not. But if it's, again, paying for, certifications or just, basic education and technical skills, whatever it is, whatever the profession is, it can pay dividends, right? A loyal workforce that stays, that doesn't go. So you don't have to.
No, I mean, hat tip to our owners and the executive team. I talked to them about this very issue, and we came together and talked about how we can upgrade our talent inside our organization. And so the first step is we're going to get everyone in our organization through the CSP, through the ASA, the Certified Staffing Professional. So
That's great.
Basic understanding of employment law, federal, state, co-employment, ethics. Like, these are things that'll help. If we invest in our team, they're going to have more informed conversations with our talent, more informed conversations with their customers, just make better hiring decisions, ethical decisions, and legal decisions. And, that protects us all around, but it also upgrades our talent, because now they've just got this certificate and a skill set that they can take anywhere.
You made a tremendous point, right? So now your employees that have that CSP and they understand employment law and things of that nature, they can have more educated conversations with your client companies and your prospects. Because, hey, it's no longer enough just to go and give a client company a candidate, right? They want us to educate and inform them and tell them about what's going on in the industry and help them through their problems and their issues and help them solve their specific issues. So, calling up and just saying, hey, it's Bob, from, your employment solutions, how you doing? There's no value in that.
No.
There's great value add to the fact that if you're certifying your folks and they can go and educate that client on, trends, changes, market dynamics, laws, regulations, that's a huge differentiator for your employment solutions versus a company that's not made that investment in their people.
Yeah. All right. I know we're coming up on time. I want to share a few actionable insights from our discussion, Kim. So double down on relationship building. So I'm talking to you staffing firms today. Companies are still hiring, but cautiously. They want quality. They don't want quantity. So build that trust. Show how your process leads to better fit workers the first time. Adopt technology before your clients do. Show them how you can get to the candidate faster and you get quality candidates before anybody else. Position yourself as a workforce strategic partner, one that helps them pivot when the economic shifts happen like they are. Talk about labor trends. It's not just fill rates anymore. They don't care about that as much as what's actually affecting their business. Watch the sectors that are growing, right? So, warehousing, logistics is still growing right now. A lot of people are nearshoring their product. They're doing, instead of JIT, they're doing just in case. Food and beverage is always a regular, even though, kind of is seasonal. We all need food. We all need our beverages. That's not going away. So go talk to them. Your state and local, governments, they're hiring. They need help, just like you mentioned, Kim. Upskill your workforce. This is a big play here. It's a strategic investment, not an operational cost. And, be nimble with pricing and value. Everyone's getting squeezed. It's not, your clients aren't just squeezing you for fun, although some probably do. They're being squeezed too by their vendors. So let's demonstrate that ROI. Let's talk about retention, safety, productivity, not just price alone. Kim, that's That's really what I got out of our conversation today.
Well, that great summary. The only thing I would add to that, Steve, is whether you're a new graduate going into the workforce, or whether you've been in the workforce and you're looking for a job. Again, think about some of the things that we talked about today. Reaching out to managers directly on LinkedIn to get conversations going, getting out of your chair and going to professional association and networking events that align to your industry and your profession and your skill set, right?
Yes.
Be willing to maybe look at some things that check most of the boxes, but not all of the boxes if it's a good opportunity, right? Like a contract to hire role. Will this role help, better you, in terms of your skill set, and will it open up other doors for opportunity, even though it may not be perfect? If so, jump on it, take it. You never know what can happen. So I think some key pieces there. And then for staffing companies, consider engaging with a university or college system that's closest to your location, and getting out there and meeting the students. Not only does it help them get a job or prepare them to get a job, but what's in it for you is it can help you fill your pipeline of candidates that ultimately you can place with your client companies as well. It takes a little time, it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of navigation. It's actually worth it when it comes to candidate identification.
100%. That was great. I can't believe I missed those two big things. Thank you, Kim. You're our compass. You keep us on track.
Great.
All right. So 2 announcements. One, Kim, you and Richard, the Staffing Shark, just finished your 2nd round of the summer school staffing series. I attended the first. Unfortunately, I was not able to make the one yesterday on selling statement of work. But you guys had over 180 attendees. What's the next series that's coming up? Tell our audience about it.
Thank you, Steve. The next series coming up will be July 23rd, and it's going to be differentiation, gaining client share, and value add, right? So if you're a staffing company, hey, let's face it, we all struggle to be a little different. We all struggle to gain that client share versus the one and done placement. And we all struggle to add value, right? How do we keep in touch, stay top of mind when they necessarily don't need us to hire? How do we add value and kind of stay in front of them without, being pestering?
That is going to be a great class. I'm not going to miss that one, Kim. I cannot wait. And here's the interesting thing. Kim, early on, she was telling me about this series, this training. And, she was telling me about different prices, maybe $250, maybe $500, maybe $1,000. And then somehow you just overnight made it free. So they can tune in the next one absolutely free. Is that right?
It's absolutely free. We thank our sponsors, which are, ASIN, Type Marketing, and Prelate, which actually made it where we could offer these sessions for free. So we thank our sponsors.
It's awesome. All right. The other thing is I'm likely going to be at Aviante Connect, still working out the details. I'll also be at ASA World. But the first 10 people that reference this episode with Kim, whether it's at Aviante Connect or ASA World, I am going to give you a Staffing Playbook t-shirt on the spot. So first 10 people that reference this episode with Kim, you're going to get yourself a free podcast t-shirt at Aviante Connect, as well as ASA World. So come get your free t-shirt.
That's awesome. I don't know about anyone out there. I'm a sucker for t-shirts. I mean,
right.
I think we all just collect t-shirts like we did with baseball cards as little kids, right? And Steve, I'll definitely be seeing you at ASA Staffing World beginning of October, which will be here before you know it. So
that's right.
It's a great opportunity to meet and learn. I learned so much last year.
100%. Well, Kim, as always, you bring so much value to the conversation. We are actually going to see you and Richard next week. We're going to do a live event. And so, that'll be a lot of fun. So tune in. I don't even know what day it is, but I'll put it in the show notes. Sometime next week.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it. It's all good.
All right. Well, thanks again, Kim. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Steve. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Hey, thanks for watching today's episode. This episode is sponsored by Staffing Referrals. We have relied on staffing referrals for years to turn satisfied associates into brand ambassadors, keeping quality talent coming in and lift retention. See what it can do for you at staffingreferrals.com or click on the link in the description. Thanks for watching.